Hello and welcome to another edition of the Sports Pro podcast. I am your host, Tom Bassam, as always, and in this week's episode, we'll be turning our attention to the agency game, and in particular, Roc Nation Sports. This week, I am lucky enough to be talking to Michael Yormark, who is the president of Roc Nation Sports International, and we'll be discussing all about Michael's drive to expand Roc Nation outside of the US and how, with just a suitcase in his hand and the backing of Jay-Z, he made the jump across the pond to set up here in London. Amongst other things, Michael gives us an insight into the Roc Nation approach for signing and serving clients, his view on the changing landscape of player marketing, and how, after 5 years, he feels the plan is going. Now, this interview took place at Roc Nation's London offices near Oxford Circus in late May, and as it's been a little while since I went and spoke to Michael, some of the events that are mentioned as being in the future have now passed. But for now, here's Michael Yormark. Michael, welcome to the Sports Pro podcast.
Thank you.
Before we start talking about Roc Nation International, what's your background? How did you get to be running Roc Nation International? What's the experience and the career path that's brought you to this point?
So the career path is about 25 years. I started off in the sports industry in America, running professional sports teams, for close to 20, 25 years. I then switched from the sports team side of the business to the agency side back in 2014, and had the opportunity to join Roc Nation, a company founded by, the entrepreneur and artist Jay-Z. I never thought I'd join an agency, but when I met Jay and all of his partners, I realized that this was more than an agency. This was really a purpose-driven company that wanted to do good. And I was attracted to that. So I joined Roc Nation in 2014. I worked out of their HQ in New York City for the first 5 years. And then I had this vision of coming over to Europe and inserting us, into the football industry. Roc Nation Sports, was founded about 11 years ago, and we've become a fairly dominant player within American football, baseball, and basketball. But I felt the real growth opportunity was here in Europe, and that growth opportunity specifically was in the world of football. And so about 6 years ago, I came over to Europe and I met with different, league executives, club executives, agency executives, to really understand what was missing, to see what kind of void we could fill, as an organization, and to see if we could make a difference and be disruptive in a positive way. The answer to all of that was there was an opportunity. And so in September of 2019, I took a suitcase and I ventured across the pond and came to the UK without my family, without any employees from America. And I said, you know what, we're going to start this from scratch. We could have gone out and acquired a company to get into the business or partnered with an existing football agency to get into the business. But as I explained many times, we wanted to do it the old-fashioned way. We wanted to do it on our own. We wanted to take our guiding principles that has made Roc Nation a very successful agency, guiding the careers of artists and athletes, and take those guiding principles here to Europe. And that's what we did in September of 2019. And we opened up our first doors right here in the UK.
I'd like to kind of come to that journey in a minute. There's one thing I'd like to go back to. You said you never saw yourself joining an agency. Why was that?
I just was never interested in, what most agencies are, and that is transactional. It's all about the player move. It's all about the commercial transaction. I always wanted to be part of something more than that. To me, the transactional part of the agency business was not attractive. But when I sat down with the owners of Roc Nation, and they explained to me the vision of the company, they explained to me the guiding principles of the company and how they wanted to impact lives through representing athletes and artists the right way, both on the field and on the stage and off, it became very intriguing to me. And as I heard more, I became very interested and very enthusiastic about it. And here I am 10 years later at Roc Nation, leading the business on an international basis, and it's been a great journey.
Coming to the international business bit, and you say you picked up a suitcase. I mean, it helps when you're called Roc Nation, right? That probably opens a few more doors than, say, just any other agency opening up a shop in Europe. What have you learned? What's been the journey since you sort of set up offices here and came into the European market? Because it is very different, right?
It's very different. So you talk about, the Roc Nation name, and yes, it opened up a lot of doors when I came here initially in 2019. But when people thought about Roc Nation, they thought of a music company. For whatever reason, even though we had been involved in the sports business, that didn't translate as it relates to our brand. And so the first thing I had to do was educate people that we're not only a music business, we're not only guiding the careers of artists, but we're also doing the same for athletes. And we've done it very successfully in America with NBA players and NFL players and Major League Baseball players. It was important for me to go through that educational process because that gave us more credibility, that we knew the world of sport and that we were experienced in that area. And that helped us, enter the football industry aggressively.
And you had some big signings first up, right? I remember when you signed Lukaku and there was a whole social campaign that went around that. And I understand he's not still with Roc Nation, but you went straight after some big names and landed some.
Well, listen, I think from a credibility standpoint, it was important for us to align ourselves with big, football brands. And obviously, and actually the first athlete that we signed was Jerome Boateng, the former Bayern Munich great. And he was the one that really helped me develop the passion for coming across the pond and really inserting ourselves into the football industry. And then we had a couple of other signings, following him. But Romelu Lukaku was another big signing for us. He really elevated us to the next level. And he actually convinced me that we, Roc Nation, could make a huge difference in the football industry if we came across the pond. And through his convincing and the confidence that we had that we could do it, that's why I moved over here in September of 2019. Along the way, we also had signed, Kevin De Bruyne, one of the best players in the world, obviously.
Yeah.
And so that in itself, gave us a lot of credibility. And it was the same approach that we had in America. When we first started in the sports business, our first signing was Robinson Cano, who at that time was a big New York Yankee and one of the best baseball players in the world. That was followed by Kevin Durant, one of the best basketball players in the world. So from our perspective, it was critical to align with top brands in the football business to give us credibility and to help us enter the business.
And what were the sort of the nuances that you had to learn about the European market once you arrived here? So you've got your big players on, you're starting to pick up a bit of momentum, but there must have been things that you were like, wow, this is very different to how we do things back in the States.
Obviously the culture here is very different. And there was a bit of a learning experience. As I mentioned earlier, I came here by myself. So the first thing I had to do was put together a staff. I wanted to bring people that understood the football business. I wanted to bring people in and hire people that really understood the culture of the UK and in Europe. Finding the right people initially was the biggest challenge, because it wasn't all about just hiring people that understood football and understood the culture. They had to understand Roc Nation. They had to understand how we do business and what our expectations are for our employees. So that was a challenge initially. The other big challenge was just truly understanding the landscape and understanding and creating a blueprint for our success, which really had to revolve around how are we going to position ourselves differently and how are we going to articulate that? Because as I mentioned earlier, we are a different agency. We're purpose-led. It's all about the impact that our clients can make, both on the field and off. That's what drives us every day. And so how do we articulate that point of differentiation? How do we tell that story so that we can go out and recruit some of the best young talent and some of the best established talent in Europe?
Hiring is difficult for every single business. How much education were you having to do for the people that you were bringing in to get them up to speed on the Roc Nation brand and the way that you work? And as you said, it's quite specific. It's different to what maybe is in the agency sector here.
It took a lot of time, and as I reflect back into September 2019, as we hired each and every member, of our staff, what really was most important to me was making sure that the individuals that came into the Roc Nation family had the right DNA. Listen, at the end of the day, this business is fairly simple. You can teach the day-to-day to anybody that wants to be taught. What you can't teach is hustle, commitment, passion, providing service 24/7, going the extra mile, creating consistent opportunities for our clients. That's how Roc Nation wins. And so I needed to hire people that really understood that. It was less about, can you do this job from a skill set perspective, and more about, can you embrace this job and everything it entails to help us win and to help yourself win? That was really the key.
And how long do you think it took you before you got that right?
Well, listen, it took some time. We are almost 5 years into this. And I will tell you that I have one employee that really was here from day one. People have moved on. They've done a great job here and they've moved on to other opportunities. But it's no different than building a successful football team. You've got to bring in the right pieces. You know, sometimes pieces leave, sometimes pieces come in, but it's all about finding the right chemistry, you know, finding the winning combinations. And that's what we've had to do over the last couple of years. But I will tell you, the group we have now, they get it. They understand the expectations. They want to be here for the right reasons. They want to be part of this exciting journey. They want to be part of something that's different, okay, that ultimately will make an impact on the lives of our clients. And so it took a little time, but we're finally here.
Do you think Roc Nation International has shifted the market here? Do you think you've had an impact in the way that, like, your rivals do business, and that they've seen, okay, we've got this other agency that's come over here from the US. They've got a slightly different way of doing it. They're enjoying some success now. Do we need to react to that and change the way that we do things?
Absolutely. I mean, I often tell people that not only can we impact the lives of our clients, but we can raise the bar in the industry. If we do great things, people are going to watch us and they're going to say, you know what? We need to do the same. Whether it's the type of service we provide, the type of support that we provide, how we care for our athletes, how we make every single client feel like they're the most important client in the entire company. That approach is very different. We're not a transactional agency. We're an agency that helps our clients create impact in whatever they do, on the field, on the court, on the stage, and off. And so I think we have raised the bar for agencies in the UK, in South Africa, in Italy, throughout Europe, and now even in Brazil, as we've just recently, as you know, entered the Brazilian market.
Yeah. With that sort of that raising the bar, the impact and all of that kind of thing, how have you sort of changed from what your clients are expecting? Do they come in now being like, okay, look, previously I'd have my agent who would take care of this, and this. And you're like, okay, well, yeah, we can do that. What's the thing that now your clients are asking and demanding for that's that step up?
Well, I think any client that joins Roc Nation has a high expectation. They want to be represented professionally. They want to be treated special and as a priority. They want us to create opportunities for them. You know, whether it be philanthropic, whether it be commercial, whatever it is, they want us to create opportunities and leverage their success on the field to create those opportunities off the field. And then, of course, they want us to negotiate the best deals we possibly can for them. And that includes both on-field and off-field. So the expectations are high. And we've got to continue to meet those expectations and hopefully exceed them. And so one of the things that we have to be very careful of is not growing too quickly, growing strategically, still maintaining that boutique approach so that we can give the time and effort and support to each one of our clients and make sure that they feel, again, like they're the number one priority in our company.
What would you say is the Roc Nation Sports International values? You're going into a pitch, and what are the things you say, look, these are our fundamentals. Break that down for me.
It starts, number one, with family. Whenever we go out and tell the story about Roc Nation, we talk about our family. And family protects people. Family defends people. Family creates opportunities. So it starts with family. It's a big part, of the value proposition, of the story, of the values that we communicate. We also talk about accountability. We want every client to hold us accountable. When a client joins Roc Nation, we want them to have high expectations. We need to be accountable to those high expectations. But we also have high expectations for our client. right? Because we want our clients to be the best version of themselves. If they are the best versions of themselves, they will be successful. And if they're successful, we have to be successful. All right. So family is critically important. Accountability is very, very important. Communication is very, very important. If we're not meeting expectations, if we're not doing the job that our clients expect, we want them to call us out. We want them to communicate with us. We want them to have the hard conversation with us so that we can be better, and vice versa. I'm never going to sit in front of a client and tell a client what they want to hear. I'm going to tell a client what they have to hear to make them better, to hopefully help them maximize their career in the moment and in the future. So those are all very, very important core values that we have that ultimately will help us succeed for our client.
Once you've established those core principles, right? How much of what you do in terms of your differential point is brand building? I think that's something that you hear a lot in agency terms, but I think it's much more advanced in the US, frankly, than it is here. Is that really where you can bring some expertise that perhaps wasn't there before?
Without a doubt. If people ask me at the very core, what does Roc Nation do? Yes, we represent artists and athletes. We guide their careers. We manage their careers on the stage, off the stage, on the field, and off. But at the very core, we're storytellers. And through storytelling, we build brands. If we tell a story the right way, a compelling story for an athlete or an artist, and it gains traction, we're building their brand. If we build their brand, then we will create interest from a commercial standpoint, from a content perspective. That's where the brand building starts. So I think we do it differently because as a company and as individuals, we're great storytellers. We're able to effectively build brands, whether it be through the power of PR, the power of social and digital, the power of content. All of those are great tools in building a brand, storytelling behind the athlete, and making sure that people truly understand who they are as men and women, not only as athletes, but as men and women that want to impact community.
Have you got a prime example of a client where you could be like, this is what Roc Nation International does? This is one guy, one girl who we've taken and we've guided them and it's gone all the way up.
On a personal level, and as I think about the last 3 to 5 years, the client, and I call him my brother, that comes to mind first is Kolisi, the great captain from South Africa, the Springbok captain. I watched Sia for the very first time in 2019 when he lifted the Webb Ellis Trophy in Japan. And I heard his very eloquent speech. I was taken by it and I connected to it. And I said, you know what? He's a guy that should be part of Roc Nation. He's a guy that we should support. And most importantly, we need to tell his story to the world, because if we do it the right way, we can impact lives. Not only in South Africa, that was a given, but we can take his story, leverage it, and impact lives of young men and women throughout Europe, throughout America, and around the world. And as I think about the last, call it 4 years, we've done an extraordinary job. Sia Kolisi has grown as an individual. He's been able to tell his story through his documentary, through his various global interviews, through 60 Minutes in the US. The examples of what he has done to tell his story are endless. His book, Rise, which was a bestseller. And through all of that, he's a household name today. And he is somebody that truly inspires and motivates. His popularity is less about being the captain of the Springboks and more about Sia Kolisi, the man.
You said at the start of this, football was the reason that you came over here. He's obviously a big star in rugby union. Was that something that was always on the radar? Or was it, wow, this is an opportunity that almost transcends which sport?
It was not on the radar. I can tell you, as an American, as a sports enthusiast growing up, I knew nothing about rugby. The only reason I knew anything about rugby is that the gym that I initially joined when I came to the UK in 2019, they were showing, the Rugby World Cup from Japan in the gym. And I saw people gathering at the E Club on James Street watching the game. And I would ask people, what is everyone watching? Oh, it's the Rugby World Cup from Japan. That's the first time Quite frankly, I even thought about rugby. I ever watched rugby, but I got caught up in the excitement that was taking place right here in London. And then I ended up watching the finals on my way to watch Kevin De Bruyne play at Manchester City, a client of ours. And I was just completely moved by Sia Kolisi and what he accomplished as the first black captain of the Springboks. That's how we entered the sport of rugby.
So your agency with US foundings, you moved to Europe, you become interested in a sport that really you've just admitted you don't really know very much about. How do you go and sign Sia Kolisi, who's the captain of the World Cup winning team?
I'd like to say I'm a great salesman, but the reality is Roc Nation as a company had a lot to offer Sia Kolisi. You know, when you think about our founder, Jay-Z, and all of his partners, and you think about their journeys in life and where they've come from and how they have become leaders in this industry, athletes like Sia Kolisi, they can connect to that. They can relate to that. And so when I sat down with Sia Kolisi and I said, Sia, I'm from Roc Nation, and here's some of the things that, you know, we think we can help you with. Here's how we can support you. Here's how we can tell your story. The credibility of our company and the examples that I was able to share with Sia based on what we've done in the US and in Europe was pretty powerful.
Just as a follow-up to that, you mentioned Jay-Z. Did he have any involvement in that kind of signing? Do you bring him in for certain clients or anything like that?
No, I mean, of course he was aware that we were having conversations with Sia Kolisi, but, you know, listen, at the end of the day, if I bring in Jay to help recruit, it becomes misleading because, you know, Jay's not going to service Sia Kolisi on a day-to-day basis. He's not going to be the person that is going to guide Sia Kolisi on a day-to-day basis. You know, Jay's the chairman of our company. So it's important for Sia to meet the people that are going to guide him, that are going to support him, that are going to help him, that are going to create that blueprint for success. While our owners are there for mentoring and advice and support as well, the day-to-day people are the ones that have to be in the room recruiting. And so that's my role. You know, my role as the president of the international division is to make sure that I'm in the room with everybody that we're recruiting. They understand the commitment, the passion, and the involvement of senior executives in their careers. And then when I bring in Jay and our owners, you know, to support from above, you know, that's the icing on the cake.
So Sia Kolisi, obviously a tremendous success for you guys. Was that difficult to manage during like COVID, for example, where he's obviously based in South Africa, you're here, like you've got other members of the business over in America. How does that work when you're international, but you're not based in South Africa, right?
I'll answer that with a very simple answer. Where there's a will, there's a way. We didn't let COVID stop us from doing what we do. We didn't use COVID as an excuse. We looked at COVID as an opportunity. We actually stayed closer to our clients during COVID than we had before COVID. As it relates to Sia Kolisi in South Africa, I flew into South Africa nonstop during COVID. I still went into South Africa, okay? I remember going back and forth to America and going into South Africa, and I was one of 5 or 6 people on the plane. I didn't allow COVID to stop me, nor did anyone allow COVID to stop anyone that works for Roc Nation Sports International. So we continued to service. Obviously, we use Zoom and, you know, we used the phone and we stayed in close contact. But I looked at COVID as an opportunity to grow our business, to go deeper and wider with our clients, to create closer relationships with them during a very, very challenging time period. And quite frankly, they needed that support. They needed that help. It was challenging for everybody, very challenging for our clients. And so I felt there was a need for us to be there for them, not just on a Zoom or over the phone, but face to face.
I'm guessing that period has stood you in pretty good stead because since then it's been steady, but it's been growing your client roster over here and building up the profile as well of clients too.
No question. I mean, listen, I use this week, we've got the Champions League final on Saturday night here. Arguably the best player on the pitch on Saturday night will be our client, Vinicius Junior, who at this moment, you'd have to say is the front runner for the Ballon d'Or. Let's go back to September of 2019 when I came here and opened up this office. And I was the only employee. Who would have thought that less than 5 years later, we'd have the client list that we do, the depth that we do, that this Champions League week would be so important to Roc Nation Sports International, that we would be representing arguably the best player in the world that's going to be featured in that match on Saturday night. Nobody could have predicted that. And on top of that, we talk about support. Our owners are flying in, including Jay-Z, to support Vinny on Saturday night here at Wembley. So when I look back on the last 4.5 years through COVID and all the challenges that we couldn't even control, because these are global challenges, whether it's the war in Ukraine or the war in the Middle East and COVID, to be where we are today, for us to be as far as we are today, 4.5 years into our journey, it's remarkable. Absolutely remarkable.
I'd like to come back to Vinicius Junior in a bit, but actually, maybe that's quite an interesting way of going. Did you think that when you set up that you would be at this point in 5 years' time?
I'm a dreamer, okay? And Roc Nation is a dreamer. All of our owners are dreamers. I dreamed of this moment. Everyone told us it wasn't going to happen. They thought I was crazy, but I took my suitcase from South Florida and came across the pond. But at the end of the day, I had the confidence of our owners. I was confident that we could break through. I wasn't quite sure when that breakthrough would happen. And the acquisition of TFM in Brazil was a big moment for us. It elevated our business and gave us a super level of credibility. And obviously, Vinicius Junior came along with that investment. So in answer to your question, we're probably a little further ahead than I expected. But here's one thing I will tell you, the best is yet to come. We haven't even scratched the surface of where we're going to go. We've got big plans, big ambitions. We've got a big vision. And we're not going to stop until we achieve that. We feel good about where we are, but we're still the underdogs. And we still have a lot to prove, and we still have a lot to accomplish, and we're going to do it one day at a time.
Before we get to Vinicius, because I am really fascinated by that story and I kind of want to spend a little bit of time talking about it. One of the sort of interesting things about Roc Nation, and especially in football, is you've got the 2026 World Cup coming up. That's obviously in America, where you're Roc Nation Sports International. That's not your area that you cover. But you're going to have players that are playing in that tournament that are US players that are here. Does that give you like a completely different USP and view on how that market's going to work and how you're going to work with those players in order to build up their profile ahead of that tournament? Because I can't even think about the way to describe it best, but it's like the reverse of what usually happens. You're usually talking about big European football tournaments happening in Europe, maybe featuring American players that are elsewhere.
That's a great question. We came over to Europe in September 2019 knowing that we would probably go back and double down in America at the right time. And the right time is now. About 1.5 years ago, 2 years ago, we hired a head of football for America that's doing a lot of our recruiting. We already represent, a couple of high-profile players on the U.S. national team, Chris Richards, yeah, and Kevin Paredes, playing in Germany right now. Our goal is to have 5 players on the U.S. men's national team at the time of the World Cup in 2026, and we will get there. There's no question about it. We will get there. But we're doubling down in America right now. We're looking to expand. We're signing more young players. We're looking at a couple of investment opportunities so that we can expand our reach in the American market.
Is that agency acquisitions, just to clear that up?
It
right,
is.
Okay.
I think Messi's move to America has opened up the eyes of sports fans and non-sports fans to the sport of football, soccer. Obviously, America is all about star power. So it took somebody like Messi to shine a light on the MLS and to get people interested, get celebrities interested, get other stars interested in the sport. You think about this summer with Copa America, summer of 25 with the Club World Cup, and then obviously the World Cup in 2026. Some of the best players in the world will be in America over the next 3 summers. So Roc Nation is going to double down. We are going to expand. The U.S. market is critically important to us. It is a feeder market. right? So the key is to get in, to sign some of the best young talent, to develop that talent, and eventually move them here to Europe. But as a US-based company with headquarters in New York City and offices in Los Angeles, it's an opportunity that we must take advantage of right now. And we're doing that.
You're going to have to import expertise from Europe onto the football team that you have there in order to service that, do you think? Because of the unique approach of football in order to bring those people over here?
I'm not sure that we're going to need to bring, European executives into America. I think there are lots of capable Americans that understand the sport, that understand the culture of America and what's important to young athletes that are selecting an agency, that we can be very effective from a recruiting standpoint. Our head of global football, our executive vice president, Alan Redmond, is based here. He does go back and forth to America. So he will oversee the expansion in America. He will lean in when he needs to lean in, as I will, and our owners will, because they become big fans of football. They understand the sport. But at the end of the day, this is not about football when we're signing an athlete. It's about how can we impact their life. They see what we're doing in sports in America. They're now seeing what we're doing in Europe. They see that we have all the key strategic relationships. They know we can move players to Europe, that we know the owners and the sports directors and all the senior executives at all the big clubs, middle-sized clubs, and small clubs throughout Europe. That's what's important. But America's critical for us right now. And the next 2 years, the next 24 months are super important.
Because you've just got that runway into those major tournaments.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's say you're let's take an example. You're a young up and coming, maybe college star in the US. You're playing D1 football, soccer, whichever you want to call it. What's the pitch to them for Roc Nation? Talk me through that meeting.
Listen, first and foremost, we got to do our homework on that player. We got to understand what that player wants. What that player's interested in, what inspires and motivates that player. The other thing that's important is to understand that player's childhood. How were they raised and where were they raised? And once we do all of our homework, if I'm sitting in front of a young athlete, I'm going to talk about family. I'm going to talk about the commitment of Roc Nation. I'm going to talk to them about how we're not driven by the transaction and commissions. I'm going to talk about how we're inspired and motivated to help that young individual achieve all of their dreams. And I'm going to ask them, what is your dream? When you stay up at night and you start thinking 3 years from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, where do you want to be? Because Roc Nation can help you get there. Roc Nation can help you achieve your goals and objectives. And this is how we're going to do it. That's what I'm going to tell that young man or that young woman.
Do you even talk about practicalities? Do you even talk about the fact that the sort of this is what we can do, these are the places that we can take you, or is it that point literally just finding out about the person?
I want to understand what that person wants. I want to understand what that young man or young woman, what are they dreaming about? What are their goals and objectives? What are the boxes they want to check in life? And I want them to know that Roc Nation will listen first and act second. We will then put together a blueprint for success. And we will show that athlete how ultimately we can check all their boxes, how we can make those dreams a reality through the collaboration and the accountability and the good communication, as we talked about earlier. If we get that right, we ultimately will win for that client.
Let's talk about Vinicius Junior then. I've kind of trailed this a couple of times. You started talking about it earlier. He signed via the acquisition of another agency, right? That's how that came about.
So for the majority of his career thus far, he's been with an agency called TFM. Fred Penna is the founder of that agency. He's now our partner, my partner, and he is Vinny's agent. And so when we closed on that investment transaction, a year and a half ago, Vinny became, part of the Roc Nation family, and he was super excited about it. He's had the opportunity to meet our chairman, Jay-Z, in the past. He's also met, one of Jay's co-founders, Juan Perez, who is in charge of our sports division. And I think he's loved every minute of it. We've created lots of new opportunities for him. And, he is a big part of our family, a big part of what we're trying to accomplish internationally. And it's been a great relationship.
And during that time, I mean, his profile has been not just as a player on the pitch, but as an outspoken player on difficult subjects, right? Like he gets up and he talks about tackling racism in Spain, which is not an easy thing to do. And he gets criticised not just by racists who cares really what they think, but also by people that you'd be like, well, hang on a second, what's this about? Like, why aren't you defending this guy? Roc Nation as an agency, what's your role when he's speaking like that? Is it just support? We have your back? What is it?
Listen, it's everything. We want to support him. We want to know that, he's got muscle behind him. We want him to know that we're going to fight for him, that we're going to defend him, which we have. We're a minority-owned company. We don't accept racism. We want to change people's thinking about racism. And, what Vinny has gone through has been tough. It's been very tough for him and his family. And I think he's handled it really, really well under the circumstances. But we know that racism in Spain is a major issue. And Vinny's going to have to continue, to push back and to fight. But it's easier to fight a battle when you got an army behind you. And in Roc Nation, and with Fred Penna, his agent, and his management group in Spain, led by Tata, his manager on a day-to-day basis, we're his army. And we're going to defend him. We're going to protect him. We're going to push back with him. And hopefully, over time, we can make an impact.
And there's also a case to say that it can be I need to make sure I phrase this correctly, but that kind of activism can be really beneficial to his brand, right? Speaking out and being vocal.
There's no question about it. Listen, and his brand partners want to support him. Nike wants to support him. They have supported him. Vinny has been blessed and has, some incredible brand partners as part of his portfolio. They not only care about Vinny as the footballer, more importantly, they care about Vinny the man, the person. And so when Vinny hurts, they hurt. And so they want to support Vinny and they want to protect Vinny and they want to defend Vinny. But I also, to your point, think that when an athlete takes a stand and a position on something like racism, it does make them more marketable. Why? Because brands today, many of them, are purpose-led. As important as it is that Vinny's a great football player, they want to understand, what does he stand for? What does he represent? And you've seen what he represents. He's very passionate about it. So that makes him even more marketable. Yeah.
And that's something that's changed in the agency world, right? Or in the brand world, at least. It wasn't always the case. But outspoken, it was sort of just do what you do on the field and we'll sort out the rest. But now actually, that's a shift that's happened probably even in the last 5-10 years.
It's a great point. When you sit down with CEOs and COOs and CMOs and you talk about influencer marketing, the first thing they'll say is, yeah, we want the best. But we want athletes, men and women with substance. What do they stand for? What are they passionate about? How do they support community? Those are things that are super important to them today. 5-10 years ago, maybe not. It was almost like a popularity contest. Who's got the most followers? Who's winning the most trophies? Today, yes, that's important. But equally as important, there's that third bucket, and that is purpose. What is the athlete's purpose? What do they stand for? What do they represent? And what do they fight for?
And on a technical level, right, you're talking, you mentioned how Vinicius Junior is a front runner for the Ballon d'Or. Now, I'm not sure that listeners of the Sports Pro podcast are going to be they're not the people making that decision, but the people that listen to this show are interested in how, as an agency, you go about building a narrative, like storytelling for a big client in order to put them in that position. Okay, obviously, one, they've got to be playing well on the field, but two, there's got to be stuff that you guys do behind the scenes that helps build out that profile as someone being of a Ballon d'Or level brand.
Well, listen, good or bad, the Ballon d'Or stands for football excellence. Okay, I'm not sure if they really consider the off the field. And when you think about Vinny, and you think about what he accomplished what he is accomplishing right now, during this Champions League tournament, he's been outstanding. He's been the best player in the world. There's no question about that. And so over the last 60 days, he's elevated himself based on his passion, his performance on the field, and his success on the field to be in that conversation. And in our minds, he's leading the conversation, right? If you had to pick the Ballon d'Or winner today, I think Vinicius Junior wins the Ballon d'Or. Now, a lot can happen between now and October, right? Because you've got all the summer tournaments, you've got the Champions League final, you've got Copa, you've got the Euros, you've got the Olympics. So a lot can happen. But I think as an agency, our role is to amplify the conversation and to expand the conversation from behind the scenes, right? We're not going to go out and do a campaign for Vinny. First of all, that's not appropriate in the world of football, and I don't think that would ever be embraced. So what we need to do is just take other people's comments, other quotes, amplify them, and just make sure that as this conversation around the Ballon d'Or continues to grow, that more and more people understand where Vinny is in that conversation. That's what our role is.
To change speed slightly, we're talking after sort of five years of Roc Nation International. After 10 years of Roc Nation International and coming back, you're probably not going to be in this office. You're probably going to be in a bigger one. But what are we talking about in five years' time?
If I project out 5 years from now, I would hope, that we would be considered one of the premier, football agencies, management firms in the world. What I also want is every young footballer, whether it be male or female, when they grow up and they dream about playing for Manchester United, Liverpool, Man City, PSG, some of the biggest brands in football, that they also dream about being represented by Roc Nation Sports International. That being represented by us will be a very strong indication that they've made it, that they're special, and they want to be part of something special. I don't want us to be considered like any other agency. I want people to dream about joining us, to allow us to help them achieve their dreams. That's where I want to see this company. If every young footballer who's growing up aspires to be part of Roc Nation Sports International the same way that they dream about being part of a big football club, we've made it. We've made it.
On that same projection, though, do you think the industry will have changed that much in 5 years' time? Have you, 5 years ago, there were things you wouldn't have been able to predict, COVID being one. Is there anything that you're seeing now, like reading in the tea leaves, as a head of a major international sports management firm?
I would hope so. I think we can all do it better. I would like to think that we're raising the bar, but clearly we have areas that we can get better in. There's areas that we can expand into. I challenge myself. I challenge our staff every day to do more, to do things better, to think out of the box, to be more creative. And I would hope as we're sitting here 10 years from now, that we will be a better agency, that we'll be able to support our clients at a higher level, that we will help them achieve all of their goals and objectives, no matter what they are. But I also hope that the industry as a whole will raise the bar, that perhaps through some of the things that we're doing and some of the things that other great agencies are doing, that it raises the bar for everybody, and that every agency will represent athletes in a professional manner, will guide them in a professional manner, will impact their lives in a positive way. If we as an industry can do that, then we're truly setting up the next generation for huge success. And again, it goes back to our purpose. That's what we're here for. That's what we're here for.
Okay. All right. I think that's a really nice place to leave it. Michael York, thank you very much.
Thank you so much.